Before the NBA became the global powerhouse it is today, it was built on the shoulders of a few early giants, players whose names rarely echo in today's basketball debates, yet whose impact was foundational. And no name deserves more recognition than George Mikan. While modern fans praise Bill Russell or Wilt Chamberlain as the league's first great centers, George Mikan was the original superstar. In the late 1940s and early 1950s, the 6 feet 10 inches center was not just dominating the court, he was literally helping shape the game. He led the league in scoring 5 times, won 7 championships in 8 seasons, and was such a force that the NBA had to change its rules just to balance the competition. The lane was widened from 6 feet to 12. Goaltending was outlawed. And most crucially, the 24-second shot clock was introduced in 1954 because teams would stall games just to keep the ball out of Mikan's hands. One game even ended 19-18, an NBA record low score. Mikan was that dominant. The Mikan drill, a fundamental footwork and finishing drill for big men, is still used by centers today. And yet, he's rarely talked about. He doesn't show up on top 10 center lists. He isn't celebrated the way other legends are. But the truth is, without George Mikan, the NBA might never have survived its infancy. Right behind him in the shadows of time is Bob Pettit, another forgotten Hall of Fame big man. Pettit is one of only 2 players to beat Bill Russell's Celtics in the playoffs and a former MVP who averaged 26 points and 16 rebounds over his career. He made the All-NBA first team every year except his last. Yet somehow, he's now little more than a footnote in NBA history. Fast forward a few decades, and the pattern continues. John Havlicek, a Celtics icon with 8 championships, more All-NBA selections than Larry Bird, and more All-Defensive nods than LeBron James, is rarely brought up in GOAT conversations. He averaged 21 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists for his career and leads the Celtics in multiple all-time categories. But he, too, is forgotten. Then there's Moses Malone, a 3-time MVP, top 3 all-time rebounder, and nearly 30,000-point scorer across the NBA and ABA. Despite his resume, Malone's legacy remains shockingly underappreciated. He was shy around the media, not flashy, and didn't chase headlines. But on the court, he was relentless. And finally, there's Elvin Hayes, another name most casual fans don't even know. Hayes scored over 27,000 points, won a title in 1978, and is still 4th all-time in total rebounds. In his rookie season, he averaged 28 points and 17 boards, a feat only matched by Wilt Chamberlain. These are the giants that carried the league through its early decades. Their stats are staggering, their legacies foundational, and yet they remain underrated. These are not just forgotten names. They're the lost roots of NBA greatness. As the NBA entered the 1980s and 90s, the league was exploding in popularity. With the arrival of Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and eventually Michael Jordan, basketball became a global phenomenon. But in the spotlight of these towering figures, a long list of extraordinary players had their contributions overshadowed, not because they weren't great, but because they played beside legends whose lights were too bright to ignore. And no one embodies this more than Scottie Pippen. Most people remember Pippen as Jordan's sidekick, a Robin to Michael's Batman. But that framing does an enormous disservice to who Scottie really was, one of the most complete two-way players in NBA history. He was a 6 feet 8 inches point forward with elite athleticism, court vision, and defensive instincts. In fact, Pippen was the Bulls' best perimeter defender, not Jordan. While MJ was known for his steals and highlights, it was often Scottie who took on the toughest assignments, chasing shooters through screens, locking down scorers, and letting Jordan gamble for steals because he knew Pippen had his back. In 1994, the year Jordan retired for the first time, Pippen led the Bulls to 55 wins, just 2 fewer than the year before with MJ. He was an MVP candidate, and the Bulls came within one bad call of reaching the conference finals. Without Jordan, Pippen proved he was not just a sidekick, he was a superstar. But it wasn't just Pippen who was underrated during Chicago's dynasty. B.J. Armstrong, a name barely mentioned today, was one of the most accurate three-point shooters of his era. He currently ranks 13th all-time in career three-point percentage, tied with none other than Steph Curry. In a time when shooting was far less emphasized than it is now, Armstrong was ahead of his time, spreading the floor for Jordan's drives and hitting big shots when it mattered. Ron Harper, another overlooked contributor, was a 20-point scorer before joining the Bulls. Once he arrived in Chicago, he sacrificed personal stats to become a defensive specialist, embracing the dirty work most stars avoid. Tony Kukoc, the versatile Croatian forward, was another player whose talent was eclipsed by the stars around him. On almost any other team, Kukoc would have been a multiple-time All-Star. His ability to handle the ball, shoot, pass, and stretch the floor made him one of the most skilled international players of his time. Now, step outside Chicago, and you'll find another all-time small forward whose legacy has quietly faded despite a resume that rivals anyone, John Havlicek. Havlicek, nicknamed Hondo, won 8 championships with the Boston Celtics, scored over 26,000 points, and made more All-NBA teams than Larry Bird. He made more all-defensive teams than Kawhi Leonard and LeBron James. He averaged 21 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists for his career and was the heart of the Celtics for 2 decades. Yet when people list the greatest small forwards of all time, Havlicek is rarely in the top 5. Sometimes not even top 10. That's how quickly history forgets, even when you're a legend. Then there's Moses Malone. Yes, he was a 3-time MVP and one of the most dominant rebounders the game has ever seen. But he's still left out of the conversation when people talk about the greatest centers of all time.
Why?
Because Malone wasn't flashy. He didn't chase attention or headlines. He wasn't the most quotable. But what he did on the court, crashing offensive boards, scoring in traffic, outworking 7-footers night after night, was nothing short of extraordinary. He led the league in rebounding 6 times and ranks 3rd all-time in total rebounds. Yet somehow, Malone continues to fly under the radar, a top 5 center by resume, but treated like an afterthought. These players, Pippen, Armstrong, Harper, Kukoc, Havlicek, Malone, are reminders that not all greatness gets headlines. Sometimes, the best players on the court are the ones doing everything that doesn't make the highlight reel. They didn't need the limelight. They earned their place in history through consistency, sacrifice, and unmatched versatility, but it's time we start saying their names with the same reverence as the superstars they stood beside. As the NBA evolved into the fast-paced, 3-point-driven game we know today, the league began to reward certain skill sets, flashy offense, highlight dunks, long-range shooting. But in that shift, a group of uniquely skilled players, known for their versatility and team-first mentality, quietly slipped through the cracks of recognition. Let's begin with Chris Bosh, the most unappreciated member of Miami's legendary Big Three. Before joining LeBron James and Dwayne Wade in South Beach, Bosh was the man in Toronto. From 2005 to 2010, he averaged 23 points and 10 rebounds per game. He was one of the league's top power forwards at a time when the position was stacked with talent. Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, Dirk Nowitzki, and Amare Stoudemire were all in their primes. But Bosh did what many stars never could. He sacrificed. He reshaped his entire game to fit into a winning system. He spaced the floor, played elite defense, and made clutch plays that never showed up in the box score. After the Heat lost the 2011 finals, Bosh moved to center and helped redefine the position, becoming one of the league's first true stretch fives. His ability to defend, shoot, and adapt was revolutionary. When LeBron left Miami, Bosh was still producing all-star numbers, averaging over 20 points again, until a blood clot condition tragically ended his career at just 31. Had he played a few more seasons, Bosh would have easily joined the 25,000-point, 10,000-rebound club elite company. Yet today, when fans talk about the best bigs of his era, Bosh's name barely gets a mention. But Bosh wasn't the only modern forward whose versatility was ahead of his time. Andrei Kirilenko, better known as AK-47, was a 6 feet 9 inches Swiss Army knife with the body of a forward, the movement of a guard, and the wingspan of a center. During his prime years with the Utah Jazz, Kirilenko averaged over 3 blocks per game as a non-center. He was the first European and the first player under 6 feet 10 inches to ever lead the NBA in blocks, doing so in 2005. But Kirilenko wasn't just a defender. He could shoot threes, pass the ball, and make hustle plays that changed games. On the international stage, he led Russia to gold in Eurobasket 2007 and won bronze in the 2012 London Olympics. But because he played in a smaller market and never had eye-popping scoring numbers, his name faded into the background. In today's NBA, he'd be a max contract player, hailed for his defensive versatility and basketball IQ. Then there's Detlef Schrempf, a 6 feet 10 inches German forward who paved the way for European stars long before Dirk, Pau, or Jokic. Schrempf was a 3-time All-Star, the first European to ever win 6th Man of the Year, and he did it twice. From 1989 to 1999, he averaged 16 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists while shooting over 50% from the field, 38% from 3, and 81% from the free throw line, elite efficiency for a forward of his era. But his contributions go beyond stats. Schrempf helped redefine what it meant to be a forward. He could handle the ball like a guard, shoot like a wing, and rebound like a big. On those deep Sonics teams of the 90s with Gary Payton and Shawn Kemp, Schrempf was the glue that held everything together. Yet when we talk about international trailblazers or modern stretch forwards, Schrempf is often left out of the story. What connects Bosh, Kirilenko, and Schrempf isn't just that they were versatile, it's that they were adaptable. They changed roles, adjusted to team needs, and sacrificed personal glory for team success. That kind of selflessness rarely grabs headlines. But it wins games. It wins championships. And it deserves respect. They were the prototypes for the positionless basketball we see today. players who could shoot, pass, rebound, and defend all at once. Yet when the all-time lists are made, their names are often passed over for flashier, louder, or more marketable stars. It's time we correct that. The modern era wasn't just built by highlight reel dunkers and viral shooters. It was built by silent tacticians, players who quietly rewrote the rules of basketball by doing everything well, even if no one noticed at the time. As the NBA entered the late 2000s and 2010s, the league became a guard-driven machine. Three-point shooting exploded, pace increased, and the ball was in the hands of smaller, quicker players more than ever before. But in this era of point guard dominance, some players thrived quietly, racking up accolades, points, and big wins, only to be forgotten in the larger narrative. Let's start with Kyle Lowry, one of the most underappreciated point guards of the modern era. A six-time All-Star, NBA champion, and Olympic gold medalist, Lowry never had the flash of Kyrie or the fanfare of Steph. But he was the heart and soul of the Toronto Raptors for nearly a decade. Known for his gritty defense, timely shooting, and relentless leadership, Lowry was the kind of player who made every teammate better. He took charges. He dove for loose balls. He made the extra pass. And when it mattered most, like during the Raptors' 2019 championship run, he delivered in the clutch. Yet, in conversations about elite point guards of the 2010s, Lowry is rarely brought up.
Why?
Because his greatness wasn't loud, it was tough, consistent, and deeply team-oriented. Another guard often left out of the conversation is Andre Miller, nicknamed the Professor for his cerebral style of play. Between 2000 and 2013, Miller averaged 14 points and 7 assists per game. He led the NBA in assists in 2002 and consistently ran offenses like a seasoned conductor. He didn't jump out of the gym. He didn't shoot the lights out from three. But he knew the game, controlled tempo, and punished lazy defenses with surgical precision. Similarly, Sam Cassell, three-time NBA champion, crafty scorer, and vocal leader, never got the spotlight he deserved. From 1995 to 2006, Cassell averaged 18 points and 6.5 assists per game and was a key part of multiple deep playoff runs. His footwork, mid-range game, and savvy were unmatched, and his voice in the locker room was invaluable. Yet, you rarely hear his name when discussing impactful guards of his generation. And how about Mark Jackson, one of just 7 players in NBA history with over 10,000 assists? He was the ultimate floor general, controlling the pace, feeding his teammates, and always making the smart play. Yet his name is more associated with broadcasting than his Hall of Fame level resume on the court. But underrated players aren't limited to just point guards. Let's talk about Joe Johnson, also known as ISO Joe. A 7-time All-Star and one of the smoothest isolation scorers the league has ever seen, Johnson had a deep offensive bag. He could get a bucket from anywhere on the floor, especially in clutch moments. But because he never won a ring or made the conference finals, he's often dismissed in conversations about elite scorers. Yet Johnson racked up over 20,000 points, something only about 50 players in NBA history have done. That's more than Reggie Miller, more than Clyde Drexler. Still, his cool demeanor and quiet presence meant he never received the superstar branding others with lesser resumes did. Then there's LaMarcus Aldridge, one of the most consistent mid-range scorers of the last 20 years. 5-time All-NBA, over 20,000 career points, and the anchor for the Trailblazers and later the Spurs. He was never flashy, just smooth, efficient, and deadly from 15 feet in. But like Johnson, because Aldridge didn't win a title or generate headlines, his dominance went largely unrecognized. And the list goes on. Sean Marion, nicknamed the Matrix, was one of the most well-rounded players of the 2000s. He guarded every position, rebounded like a center, and scored with an unorthodox yet effective jumper. During his peak with the Phoenix Suns, Marion averaged 18 points, 10 rebounds, 2 steals, and over a block per game. He's one of only 16 players in NBA history with at least 17,000 points, 10,000 rebounds, 1,000 steals, and 1,000 blocks, and yet he's still not in the Hall of Fame. Want more names? Al Jefferson, Zach Randolph, and Tom Jamison, Tom Chambers, all scored over 20,000 points or were foundational stars for playoff teams, but were left out of the bigger NBA legacy conversation.
Why?
Because they weren't flashy, marketable, or connected to dynasties. Being underrated doesn't mean you weren't great. It means your greatness wasn't fully seen or remembered. Whether it was because of the market you played in, the era you competed in, or the stars you played beside, these players put up Hall of Fame level careers without ever becoming household names. So the next time you hear the word underrated, think deeper. Think about those who didn't ask for attention. They just earned it night after night.